Hello, I am Lucas, and this is going to be a recap of my past 2 weeks or so working on the Historialis Actions prototype. So, this is how it all started with the Google Sheets spreadsheet. I like to prototype using Google Sheets if possible. And I wanted to make an action system, so an action resolution system where you try to do something and you get this outcome, whether you succeeded or not. And I started with this idea of rolling against the challenge, and there being numbers rolling against each other, and there was also the stats and resources to use. But I wasn't happy with my initial testing of like rolling numbers against each other. So I started reading about Roman games. I don't remember what inspired me to um, look into Roman games, but I looked into this game of Tali, which is one of the two types of dice that the Romans used. And this information is actually seems wrong to me because other sources that I later found said that the numbers on the dice were 1, 3, 4, and 6, not 1, 2, 3, and 6. Anyway, uh, I might have some corrections to do if this is indeed the case, but um, I decided to use this four-sided dice to make my prototype because it sounded interesting, right? We don't see many games with four-sided dice. So I started having ideas about that, how that might work. I saw from my research that the Venus roll was the best roll, and that was one of each. So I started thinking, okay, what might the other rolls be? So I decided to let's make two sides row. Oh, so here they have the other information. Here it says 1, 3, 4, and 6. And here's one of the tallies. So these are like bones of sheep or something weird like that. And here there was some information about what the rows were. So Kani's 1111. Vultur was 333. And then Venus the best throw 1346. So I figured, okay, let's make this rows. You row 4 of these, like the Romans roll, and then your challenge rolls 4, and we'll compare. This was another cool resource by this Michael J. Speakman. He made some games with some modern games, I guess, with Tali because we don't know exactly how the Romans played. There's some attempts at reconstruction as well. And yeah, in this in his resource, there was this technical drawing of the tali, this knuckle bones, and there were of course many problems that came up as I tried to prototype this game. Um, Surprisingly, not as many problems as I thought came up, but I did write a bunch of them down, like here. I guess that my bigger problem when prototyping this was just having so many ideas and so many directions to take the game. Um, yeah, I have like two big lists, I guess, here. One is problems and one is ideas, and I have way more ideas than problems. So we'll see how that goes. And then I made the prototype on Godot, So I started coding it. Um, I knew the code was not going to be amazing, so I did pretty poor code, but it works. It was fast to make. Very, very quick prototype code. It still took me, I don't know, I guess a couple of weeks to finish the whole thing. This is how it all started for the Godot one. I had some resources which I knew I would use, and then the two sides for the action. I wanted to try to replicate the Historia Realis UI to make sure everything fit. So in the final game, in the left, you're going to have like character information. In the right, you're going to have some menus and lists of things, actions, things, notifications, stuff like that. And then I have like a limited space in the center for the action UI. I wanted to limit myself there as well in the prototype to make sure that I will have space later. So this is the first two rows, right? And what I quickly realized was that some roles were more common than others, or there were like types of roles. So what will happen very, very often was you would get this situation with one pair and then two unique dice. And this turns out to be over 50% of roles follow this pattern just mathematically. And then there are more rare ones. Like this is the Venus row, this is the best row, and it's one of each. But surprisingly, it's not that rare. It's about a 10% chance to roll that. And you have some rolls are actually very rare, and those are the all all the same. So all the same number. If you're going for a specific number, I think that's under 1%. So 6666, that's a very rare row under 1% chance. And I associated those rows with Roman gods and Roman heroes because they had the Venus row. And then I decided, oh, I can make my own names for the other ones. And then I started researching what might those be. And okay, for the common ones, let's do heroes. For the other ones, let's do gods. And I think that turned out pretty cool. And I kept having ideas. I had so here it's just a bunch of ideas that I have. I started coloring the text like this because I was like, okay, I might want to read this later. Usually the purple text is my best ideas. I save as purple, and then the yellow ones are like, oh, read this later. It might have something interesting. But here's when I wrote, you could have knuckles or knuckle bones saved from other situations and replace your rolled ones with these saved ones somehow, similar to how you steal. So I was working on the steal mechanic, but then I realized, oh, I can save the tokens, and that turned out to be a mechanic that was better than the stealing. Um, there was a reroll mechanic that I implemented and that did not make into the final game because it turned out not to be very interesting. It was just not very impactful. Like I wrote in the dev diary, I wanted the mechanics to always be impactful. So instead of re-rolling, you just you can insta win. There's a very powerful button that you can press that's the overcome button. But at the same time, it's a high cost thing. So it's guaranteed to work, but you really need to want to press it. And this was the first interactions with the Tali. So here I think I was using the steel mechanic on a 6 to grab it for myself. That mechanic was also cut from the prototype. Oh yeah, so when you were stealing, there was a whole challenge thing. You would like press the 6 to try to steal it, and then you would go into a challenge. Those are the types. I made resources for all of the types. And yeah, this was the challenge screen. It would pop up out here, and then you would roll a new number against the opponent's number. So there was some percentage chance that would work, like the boast works right now, but it was more involved. And I ended up not liking that. This is a cool comment. I feel like this shouldn't be in the UI code. I definitely shouldn't have logic in your UI code, but I broke that rule because it doesn't matter. I think I couldn't find a single bug in the prototype, so that's good. It's not very extensible, right? If we were to update it, that gets harder. I was able to make it pretty fast. Well, this is again the challenge. I was experimenting with buttons for use momentum and boost. I think these buttons will actually come back. I ended up not liking the fact that right now you just mouse over the result to over your result to overcome or over the opponent's result to boast. There's a problem with that, which is that I have to pack a lot of information to that tooltip. So having separate buttons would mean I can separate the information into two tooltips, and I think that will be better. Here you can see me wondering if it should be boast or taunt. Probably boast. I ended up changing it from taunt, which was my initial naming of it. I don't know. It felt too much like an MMORPG. Boasting kind of fits better thematically, I think. Um, I did some research on the Roman gods. I don't think I had ever read so much or researched so much about the Roman gods. Not something I read about very often, just to do the naming and stuff. More colorful ideas here. This is the name the roles are in. So we have Lavinia against Venus. And then a pause from the prototype to work on the map. So I decided to turn the map, which was going to be a small thing, into a background thing. So make the map much bigger in the game. And then I added the those text that is so classic in grand strategy games. Tried to make it prettier, more colorful. I like these waves, but I couldn't get them to work great yet. So I think they'll make a comeback at some point. I worked on also the headers for the new Steam page update. Oh, this is what it looks like now. Kind of. I mean, you can search for Historialis on Steam and you're going to see the Steam page. So back to coding. This is the get diff, the difference between one side and the other. That turns out to be a very reused method in the code. I always need to be comparing the two sides to each other. This is I was adding the chance and the colors for the boost. This is a 57%, a bit hard to see behind the mouse, but there's also this color coding where if your chances are better, the color is nicer. I guess it's the green if your chance is over 85% or something like that. And then there's different colors for other stuff. Then I had this idea because I wanted to write about this, and I had this idea for why was I doing the system the way that I was doing it. So I talk about this in the dev diary, which I'm going to link in the description here. So I talk extensively about this, but the idea is basically that since actions are so frequent, they cannot be too involved or too. I ended up replacing this with demanding. They can't demand too much from the player. And there are things that can demand more from the player, but they have to be less frequent. Otherwise, you are in the annoying zone. I changed to make this clear what the problem is. The problem is that things that are too frequent and too demanding become annoying. Then I wrote about that. So this was the writing of this diary. I This was a cool find in Reddit ancient room with the colorful Trajan's column. The Romans liked colorful stuff. I ended up making the tally very colorful, so I guess it fits. I don't know if they're going to remain like that. The beginning of the diary, this changed a little bit, and then back to coding. I was doing action choices at this point because I started just doing the action loop, and then I would just jump from action to action. And then here I started doing the choosing between actions. So I made this little to-do list. What were the final things that I needed to get done? And this was the first implementation of action selection. It's just a difficulty, and you choose between difficulties, and I think that's the most important choice, but there's also a layering of choices there to make your decision more interesting. You can also see here that I was thinking about letting you play multiple endeavors, and that ended up cutting that, and you just restart. You can play as many as you want. You don't have to go up to 3. You can play 20 or 100, but you have to restart the game for that. And here I started making things a little bit nicer. Started doing different sizes for the fonts. Here we have the roll chances and the first appearance of the omen, which is a very important part of the prototype, and it came very late. And the auspices came right after. I'm still not sure about this mechanic and if the auspices and the omen are going to be separate. Here you can see just what's behind the auspices. They actually, right now, they will say like, oh, very good, very bad. But it's a float. I actually need to think more deeply about that because generally using floats is not good. Um, so yeah, this is how in the background the code decides the bonuses for the actions. I think I ended up changing this a bit, so it's not exactly like this right now. but it just rolls from 1 to 100, and if it's within some range, it will make the action reward an omen. If it's some other range, it will make the action reward extra momentum. This was getting ready for the tokens. So the tally. Oh, the extra roll. So this was an idea that I had, which was in my to-do list, where you would be able to add an extra roll. So right now you can do, you can roll a 20, you can roll a 25, right? You roll 4 tally. And I was thinking I could have let the player roll another set of 4 tally and add that. But that's the biggest problem with that was actually a UI problem where I would need a button to be basically permanently there so that the player knew this was possible. But you very rarely have 4 tally in your hand, so it seems like a kind of a waste of space. And there are other things that I can do with those extra tally, which I ended up doing for the omen, the auspices. Here you can see a bunch of extra tally there. This was adding the other ways to use the tally. So by pressing the auspices button, you can spam the tally to improve your auspices, and suddenly Victoria 3. So I took a break. Sorry. I took a break to play some Victoria 3. I hadn't played since release, I think. I could not really get into it just because of a lack of, I don't know, commitment to it. I I found this very interesting about the tutorial that there's this tell me how and tell me why. I don't know that there are other tutorials that do this. Um, I don't think the execution for that is amazing. I think it's a bit annoying. So my biggest problem with that was that when I press tell me why, I have to go through the menus. I have to find the right buttons just so that it will tell me why. It will do the next thing. Um, but it is an interesting idea, to split between tell me how and tell me why. I'm not sure if it's a good idea, but it's definitely an interesting idea. I don't know how far I got into the tutorial. I think I got pretty not far. That's Belgium. I watched some Warcraft 3. This is grubby tournament, invitational. I played some Civ. There was the Civ update, um, where you can now play as just one civilization. I think it's the Test of Time update. You don't have to change civs, but there's still the eras mechanic. You can't opt out of that. Though they try to, I don't know, soften that a little bit. You get some options to keep some stuff. I think this was a big blunder in this terms of design. Probably one of the biggest strategy game design blunders of all time. Um, I really wonder what the decision making there was and how that happened. Very unfortunate, I think. And I don't think they managed to really address it. So yeah, Civilization 7 still couldn't get into it. I think I managed to play, I guess, skim through the Ancient Age, and then I got very, very bored. But I was already bored during the playthrough. And back to Historialis, I was making changes to the map, making some tiny improvements to the map. I think it can still look better, but it's not the focus, so it's not going to look that amazing. And then I just had some stuff to finish up for the prototype in order to make it available for you right now. Um, an end screen, and that was the end screen, and then adding this panel to the right, making stuff prettier, adding more fonts like here in the choose your action, adding colors to stuff so that you can easily read the difficulties. I I I always knew this wasn't going to be a beautiful prototype, but I wanted to make it usable and readable as much as I could. So there's this failing text and the color, so you immediately know, right? You get into the action, you don't need to be looking at the numbers, like you just know if you're failing or not. And then the tally, finally, the little shapes. I added those. I ended up changing the colors a little bit. There's also the difference. There's more spacing. I fit them better there. So I think this is pretty much the final look. Um, I'm not sure if if they're going to be filled with a color like this or if they're going to have an outline. That remains to be seen. And you can see me reading about something in the in a Reddit there, Reddit game dev comments. But it's doing the restart button here to restart the game, making all of these buttons work and go to their links. And that's a Venus row there. And then I got stuff done for the tutorial. Wrote out my script, recorded it, and I posted the dev diary. And the tutorials in the dev diary. I ended up making another video, just the try harding. Um, and my camera FPS is really bad. Sorry about that. Anyway, those were my comments on how I got the prototype done. Maybe some of that was interesting to you. Let me know if this format of video has any value. And please play the prototype. I need more feedback for that. I'm gonna have to do some begging for feedback. And you can find that in a link at your nearest YouTube description. And yeah, please play that and use the feedback form or join our Discord to give me some feedback. I'd really appreciate that. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.